I often get complaints from the DMCA about what's on this message board and all the other sites that are associated with it. A lot of the other people in the reverse engineering community also have these same problems, constantly under attack by script kiddies or whomever it is. And I thought maybe y'all might want to know what the DMCA what the DMCA thinks they mean, because what they think and what they really are trying to convey are two different things. For those of you who have been around long enough, 10, 15 years, the old days we were software. Just steal it. I mean, that's just the way that it was. As time went on, and obviously, if any of you have followed this, as time has gone on, this has changed. All right, we no longer allow specific requests for cracks and that kind of stuff. We changed the rules. No names of targets, no key gens, no patches. Nothing that shows directly how to circumvent. No code listings showing where to circumvent. This was done to stop the release of wears and cracks and key gens and everything else. The script kiddies only wanted the glory of seeing their name show up in a search result when looking for wares or serials.
Woodmann, you increase your font because it's hard to read it.
Kind of like that. Scroll up.
But there's supposed to be like in Opera you can see like yeah, exactly. Is this better? Or a bit bigger? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Tutorials were something that everybody started with when you all first got interested in reverse code engineering. You took some of the great people from the HCU who wrote and explained, who took the time to educate. Tutorials now don't happen anymore. The protections are just so much more far advanced and too difficult to explain to someone who doesn't have even the most basic of a knowledge. There's a forum where they still show up and they still say, well, I want to know how to, bypass this protection. They want an already written script. They want an automatic unpacker. They don't want to spend any time to learn how to do it. Obviously, all of you here took the time to learn how to do it because that's why you're here. On our forum, we don't tell you, we help you to understand. If you can't show that you have some understanding, you will get no help. We've pretty much evolved from crackers to code analysis technicians, for the lack of a better description. Reverse engineers looking to understand the latest protections and code stunts. A lot of you, like viruses, for instance. You want to know, why is this code doing what it's doing? This is a community where we come and discuss all of this. Yes, a lot of people get afraid, oh no, you can't talk about viruses, all the kids will release these viruses and everything else. It doesn't happen. It's just far too complicated. If they can't already find someone else's work and expound upon that, they won't do anything original. So the whole scene of reverse engineering is pretty much completely changed. There's no more, I want to crack. It's all about learning code. There's some different descriptions. Chilling Effects, by the way, is a great repository of information. They're one of the places that help in the fight against the DMCA. The scientific method of taking something apart to figure out how it works. This has gone on forever. Man is always reverse engineered. It's just the way that it is. If nobody ever reverse engineered anything, we'd still be using modems that are 300 baud. I mean, nothing would ever change. Nothing would grow. Technology would never move along. So reverse engineering is the way it has to be. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, someone decided that, no, you can't take it apart. It's against the law, it's mine, you can't look at it. Well, it's not true. We'll look a little deeper. Let's look at the DMCA. 8 pages for reverse engineering only. Here's the other 25 pages about stealing DVDs. Well, I looked at the official code of the United States, which is where the DMCA is based. They cannot find anything to describe in detail what a copyright protection system is. Am I splitting hairs? Maybe. They got to tell me what it is specifically that I'm not supposed to circumvent. Since we don't have a legal definition of a copyright protection system, we have a problem with how this should be applied when alleging a violation. Anyone can quote the DMCA and say that this is against the law, and everyone will believe it. That's just the way it is. This is what happens to me constantly, getting complaints. Oh, and the 11th fact of being in the United States is because in the United States you're guilty until you're ever able to prove your innocence. Things are not included into such documents on purpose. It will limit the range of effectiveness. So in my opinion, the DMCA is written the way that it's written to be obtuse purposely, so they can bend the rule to make it fit whatever they want to make it fit. The tools. No person shall manufacture, import, offer to the public, provide, otherwise traffic in any technology, product, service, device, component, part thereof. That is primarily designed to produce for the purpose of circumventing a technological measure that effectively controls access to a work protected under this title. There's only limited commercially significant purpose other than to circumvent technology. I think what they mean there is those little automatic unpacking programs. Is marketed by a person or another acting in concert with a person, with that person's knowledge or use in circumventing a technological measure that effectively controls the access to work protected under this title. I spent months trying to just read 2 pages of this and understand what they're talking about. I think what they're talking about are the tools that everybody in this room uses. IDA, Ollie, soft ice, a hex editor. I mean, anything that you can use to circumvent or to change a program or do anything that they don't want you to do. You're not even supposed to look. So technically, if you're not supposed to look, then you can't use IDA, or Ollie, or any of those. But this is what they mean, and this is what they try to enforce. Well, obviously, you looked at that software and you weren't supposed to. Yeah, who the hell thought of this rule? Great minds couldn't even understand the most basic rule they're trying to convey. Don't distribute cracks, patches, keygens, serial numbers. Do reverse engineers release cracks, patches, keygens, and serial numbers? No, they don't. It's changed. We're not crackers anymore. They need to just stop with all of this and get their priorities straight. They want to believe that we're responsible for what's pirated and where's and available in every foreign country on this planet, when it's not true. It's just simply not true anymore. Notwithstanding the provisions, a person who has lawfully obtained the right to use a copy of a computer program may circumvent a technological measure. A person who has lawfully obtained the right to use a copy, this has been a point of contention for a long time. When you plunk down your money to buy a piece of software, what do you get to do with that piece of software? I've just purchased the right to use it, or is it mine? I mean, I physically gave you money, you physically gave me a piece of software. I'm going to assume that it's mine. Oh yes, for the sole purpose of identifying and analyzing those elements of the program that are necessary to achieve interoperability and independently create programs, blah, blah, blah. You all remember Dimitri, don't you? Mr. Skylarov, who went and reversed a popular program and made it work on a NIC system, and came over here for a conference and he wound up getting arrested for it. Oh, the horror. Oh, the money they must have lost from that poor. A person who may develop and employ technological measures, certain. God, I hate this. Okay? You can read this paragraph. What the hell does it mean? I don't know. It's all redundant, and it's made redundant on purpose. The purpose of American law is to confuse, always to confuse, so that myself, for instance, won't take the time and won't spend the money because I know if I have to get a lawyer to defend myself, it's going to be too much money. Yeah, all right, fine, DMCA, I'll take it down, you leave me alone. And they don't. So whatever the hell this means, I guess this means that I can look at your code, I can write a software that can strip the images from a PowerPoint presentation. I just don't know what any of this means. To achieve interoperability, I mean, it either someone who made the software, whoever wrote the software, for the most part, it either works or it doesn't. And if you wrote a piece of software that was supposed to be for a Linux-based system and it doesn't work on Windows, well, tough, buy the version that works on Windows. The information acquired through these acts permitted under available others referred to in paragraph 1 and 2. Yeah. The same may provide such information or means solely for the purpose of enabling interoperability of an independently created computer program with other programs, and to the extent that doing so does not constitute infringement under this title or violate applicable law. So if you make a program to strip ebook images for use on a Unix machine, it's all right. Well, no one's going to do that, and that's the reason why they wrote it that way. Who would spend that time? They won't. It's just ridiculous. Encryption. I'm not even going to bother. Because if you're in the field of encryption, you're not trying to figure out an algorithm just so you can steal a piece of software. Hello? It's labor intensive, and people who engage in this do it because it's their field of employment, or they're really bored and need to fill up a couple of months of free time. I'll agree with that. I should, I wrote it. If you have software that is collecting information about you, also known as spyware, you can reverse engineer it. Yeah. I would expect to be able to test the security of software and networks also. The last section deals with analog devices, which means you can't make a CD. Yes?
Has that actually been tested yet? If you are collecting, if you have software that is collecting information about you, you're able to analyze it. That would suggest that, for instance, when you Windows Genuine Advantage, we have the authorization to analyze. Is that correct?
Well, here we've not explained exactly what is personal information. Okay? I can't go any further into that because no, we haven't understood what is personal information. So I don't know if they're just getting your name or hardware signatures or something like that. Probably not. But most spyware, if it's there to strip your personal browsing habits and things like that. I think that's what they intend to mean, but I can't be sure. Analog devices are, of course, you can't make a CD player, a DVD player, or any electronic device that can circumvent the protections that's put on DVDs, for instance, which are country-based now. So if you bring your DVDs from England and you move to the United States and you don't bring a DVD player, you're kind of out of luck, which is a joke, but This is a legal decision based in the United States, where reverse engineering is an essential part of innovation likely to yield variations on a product that could lead to significant advances in technology. It becomes practical. Could do the same for software, and physical reverse engineering does for boats and other fields of endeavor. The article also states that the courts of the United States have also treated reverse engineering as an important factor in maintaining balance of intellectual law. In order to make something better, you've got to take apart the old one, find the flaws in the old one, and then improve it. That is the basis of reverse engineering software. Nothing will ever get better if you don't take a look at this crappy virus program and figure out why it can't control the newest and latest and best of things. So, it also goes on to point out that patents confer significant advantages to the owners, but only in the return of disclosure of invention so that the public can benefit from it. Okay, perhaps decompilation can help redress the balance of the recent flood of dubious software patents that's perturbed. Okay, this is another thing. Apparently, no matter what you write for a piece of software, you can go and get a patent for it. And if you write a piece of software that comes up on your computer screen that says "Hello World," well, they'll give you a patent for it, no matter how inane it is. USA is, of course, the worst country as far as the freedoms of computer users is concerned. As the CM points out, California courts have started enforcing no reverse engineering, whereas the United States government attempts to apply pressure through its economic might to other countries. The European Union has bowed to this pressure, while Australia seems to have so far resisted. Well, that's not true. Australia has. This is the bullying tactic of the DMCA. Used as a strong measure when they can't get their way, okay? And for some reason, and I don't know why, the European Union seems to fear laws made in the United States. I mean, you have your own WIPO, which is, I guess, similar in some way. But I've never gotten complaints from people quoting WIPO. It's always the DMCA. What's copyrightable? Must be original, must be in its fixed medium, only material that originated with the author can support copyright, items from the public domain which appear, no, you can't copyright, such as footage indicates a location like shots of San Francisco and Star Trek 4. Now, I didn't write this. The voyage home. Also exempted are stock characters like noisy punk rocker who gets the Vulcan death grip in Star Trek 4. The requirement that works be in a fixed medium leaves out certain forms of expression, most notably choreography and oral performances such as speeches. For instance, if I perform the Klingon Death Whale in the local park, my performance is not copyrightable. However, if I film it, then it is. Now remember, works for fixed mediums leaves out certain forms of most notably choreography and oral performances, such as speeches, like this one. But is, on a forum like mine, can people talk freely about software code without fear of retribution? And I don't see why you cannot discuss in an open forum the different flaws and the different problems in software and not be threatened. It says right here. Single words and short phrases are generally not protected by copyright, even when the name has been coined or newly created by the mark. And then words, phrases, and titles may be protected by trademark. However, well, those are words. Why can't we take those words out of someone's software? All right, so we'll call it stripping. But still, the fact remains, how much of these words can we take before it's considered theft or infringement? There's no definition to that. What rights are protected? I don't care. All right. Fair use. Now, everybody who gets accused is going to claim fair use. The biggest thing here is, if you go and rip a complete piece of software, rip the whole code, and just change the name of the software, you stole it. And, you know, now you're making profit off of someone else's complete work. Okay? Back once again to words. Why can't we just strip a section? I don't see any harm in that. Everybody does it all the time. I don't know why they're going to stand here and say, well, no, we don't do it. Yes, we do it. Okay, and then that is essentially the effect on the market. When in the United States you wind up getting taken to court for copyright infringement, the person whose work you stole has to prove that you've caused him some kind of distress. Usually it's economic distress. You stole his product, you changed it, and you sold it, and you put him out of business. Well, if you stole all his code and put him out of business, you're guilty. Okay? And that's basically how infringement is done in the United States. You can quote anyone you want, anytime. You can write little blurbs about book reviews and whatnot, but that's not taking money out of their pocket. And this is what I think that DMCA should be explaining, that, you know, because for parody criticism, news reports, and the like, that's all permitted as fair use. So, another lovely work in the way that DMCA uses copyright infringement. Well, you stole a piece of his code, therefore you're harming him. Oh, this is the part I get all the time. How to report uses and abuses of the DMCA. If someone is seeking your name without a reasonable claim of copyright infringement, that's an abuse. For example, if someone's using a subpoena to arrest and fraud that match file name but not the content, or you weren't using the IP address listed because of typo, okay. Here are the rules as set forth by the DMCA when sending a notice of infringement. You've got to sufficiently detail the copyrighted work, identify the material within the work, provide information reasonably sufficient to prevent us to contact you, provide the information such as permit us to own an allegedly infringing website and other content, including the following statement. I have in good faith believed that use of copyrighted material is infringing. I believe, in good faith, I believe. Well, he just called me a son of a bitch. I believe that's not what I said.
So, out of curiosity, you're still running your site out of the U.S.?
No.
Now, along those lines, actually, do you as a U.S. citizen, despite the fact that the site is not run in the U.S., run afoul of the DMCA, even though the physical location of the server is not in the U.S.?
No, not to this point. They haven't gotten that far yet.
Given the new legislation that came out of Washington State that appears to indicate that it's illegal to even link to online gambling sites, is this going to be something you're going to start worrying about?
No, I'm not going to worry about it, and I've never worried about it. I'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later on. For all the complaints I've received, and this is how it comes. I get a note. First I'll get an email, and then I'll get a document sent in an email. The work, blah, 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 is in violation of the DMCA. And they'll give a link to where it is and say, please remove this to avoid further action. Well, I go back to my post and I say, there's nothing wrong with this. Tell them to fill out all 8 points, and then we'll go over these points one by one, and we'll decide if it's right or if it's wrong.
Your IC is fully supportive of this then. Certainly, one of the things we've seen happen with dubious websites is that they'll target the content provider as opposed to the individual that owns the host.
Very good. When I asked if they could fill these requirements, They go to the next thing they do is they go to my host, because I tell them no, I tell the host no. I'll get an email back that says, you got 48 hours to get your shit off our server, and then they shut me down. I've argued with them, I've shown them all the aspects of the DMCA that need to be filled out and need to show this information, but the service provider, the host doesn't care. They don't want to be threatened. Everybody is so afraid of the DMCA. They're absolutely terrified that they'll have an infringing material. For those of you who visit my site regularly, you know how many times I've moved in the last 7 years.
You've referred to the DMCA a couple times as they. Again, I'm a little confused as to who you're referring to. Do you mean the RIA or the FTAA?
No, I will address them later on in this, but for the most part, when I say they, I mean just the DMCA. Okay, 5 times in 7 years. That's 5 times I'm moving 40 gigs of data, reintegrating databases on servers that have completely different setups. It's a huge undertaking that requires 4 or 5 of us to do it, and to get it done and to get the site back up and running within a week.
Does the DMCA offer any options for compensation under false accusation?
Yeah, but that's just a whole nother. You got to jump through hoops. First of all, you have to do, if you want to even play that game, the first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge that the DMCA is maybe correct. You file counterclaims stating, well, they might be, but I want a little time. We'll go through all these things. Then, if your service provider pulls down your material and it's determined that nothing on there was infringing, then yes, you are entitled to monetary damages, including reimbursement for your attorneys and any other fees that you might occur as a result of this erroneous action. Okay, and that's written in the DMCA, and that's specifically pointed to hosts so that they will, how can I say this, kind of make it look like they're not trying to be pricks by saying, well, if we're wrong, we'll give you money. But, like I said, no one's going to fight them. I've used the tactic once and did get my content replaced immediately.
Is your ISP US based?
No.
I'm just curious because you say that they can take your content down, and of course it's something that's a US based law, which theoretically should apply elsewhere.
Well, no, it shouldn't, okay? And this was all happening while I was in the U.S. The reason why I moved offshore was because I got tired of spending all the time in these legal battles while my site is down, trying to prove to these people that there's nothing wrong. Got to remember, the minute the service provider gets it, if they're not happy in 48 hours, you're done. Oh yeah, remember the original the intent of the internet was to allow the free exchange of information? That's really what it was, believe it or not. The theory has long been non-existent. Everything you see is or has been manipulated by some entity. As of mid-February, Google had decided to make it known to the public that some people were using the DMCA to make Google stop returning search results that include links to copyright material. This one particular story that I read was a DMCA cease and desist regarding a photograph of a woman. And Google posted the whole thing from the DMCA and said, well, this was on this image was available on a site where you were supposed to pay for it. How did the bot get in if it was supposed to pay? When you upload anything to a website, you have to ensure the safety of that material. You don't want a spider or a bot to see it. You have to secure it. File a username or password. I mean, it's not a big deal. If you've got content that you don't want people to see, it's not a big deal to protect it. When a spider and a bot goes around and around, and it just keeps going around and logging all these things, and then you type it into Google and boom, oh look, there's a free picture of so-and-so. That it was out there freely. I mean, if you put it there, and you put it unprotected, then I'm going to assume that it's for all to look. And if I can right-click on the image and save it, well, that's your problem. I mean, yes, don't upload it. It's as simple as that. There are other ways to get your materials out to people, especially via email. So you made some material available and people started taking it. Just because you put up a disclaimer that says you cannot use my stuff does not mean that people of bots won't take it. And my novel idea is make people responsible for their own actions.
Now, generally, in the past when that's gone before a judge, there's been requirements for showing due diligence. This is one of the fundamental things about copyright and trademarks. You have to show proof of due diligence in defending, which is where we get a lot of the ridiculous trademark cases. So,
that's the trade secrets, though.
Say again?
That's the trade secrets, not for trademarks.
Actually,
No,
it's not trademark.
it actually is trademarks. It actually specifically is trademarks.
How do you protect the trademark? I mean, you write it on the paper.
You defend a trademark as in, that's why you get things like, for instance, companies suing to have ownership of, or have other people not be allowed to use the phrase which is their trademark. If you don't show protection of your trademark for applied appropriate use, it becomes a general use term, things like in the U.S. Kleenex to refer to tissue. Things like that, and at that point it ceases to be a trademark which you can claim ownership of and brand value in.
But it's completely different from copyright. Trademark is
Yes, absolutely.
There's a whole separate...
But the thing is, it seems like if the case you just described were actually to go to court, and I don't remember whether it did, there would be an expectation of showing due diligence, and as you said, if it was supposed to be password protected or behind a locked site, and it wasn't, then that's a lack of due diligence. So it seems like that would directly address this issue and remove the claims. It seems like the DMCA in this case is being used as a boogeyman.
Oh, absolutely. That's how people use it. Here's my lame example. I left my front door unlocked and someone walked in and took my TV, so I called the police and said, someone stole my TV. The police asked me, was the door locked? No, I didn't lock the door. I forgot. So the police laugh in my face and walk away. Now the insurance company's not going to buy me a new TV because of my own stupidity. Now I'm mad I don't have a TV. So I sued the police based on the fact that they were supposed to protect me and my stuff. And they didn't. Sounds reasonable if you think about it. What's their job? To protect me and my stuff. The judge would just instruct the bailiff to shoot me for being an idiot. When you leave the front door unlocked, you run the risk of losing your stuff. As applicable to a website as anything could be.
Actually, you don't. If you leave your door unlocked and somebody comes in without permission and takes your stuff, you're still absolutely within the legal bounds of arguing that this is theft, and your insurance will actually be expected to reimburse and replace it, and the cops will take it as a crime report and will actually follow up on it. The fact that you leave your door unlocked doesn't have anything to do with it. It really doesn't. I mean, I'm not arguing that I disagree with you. I'm just pointing out that your analogy is flawed.
Okay. Fair enough. I'll accept that. What my intended analogy was that if you get to the front page of a website and the website has a disclaimer that says you can't use any of this stuff, and they leave the front door open and you start going in.
I think there's a difference between looking at the front of the house and walking into the house. If the front page of the house says, hey, don't come in here, and you go in anyway, then quite arguably, you're doing something that they said, hey, you know...
Oh, all right. Well, then we can change that. We can change the angle on that and saying...
Actually, in the United States, they just recently, there was a court case where there was some guy that was trying to apply his little click-through license, right? Force people to get a login and said, oh, you can't, if you're an employee of these organizations,
Right,
you can't come down
that was
here.
great.
And because he didn't password protect it, he didn't screen the people he was giving logins to. This as the Supreme Court. What was the Supreme Court?
I don't think we're that far up.
It did not go that far up. But yeah, that's done quite often as a tactic. A lot of times, I think it fails miserably. You know, you should be a little bit more secure than just putting that disclaimer up, especially when you're dealing with stuff in faraway countries. All right, because Google would never endanger their investors' money, they just flat out decided to block, at that particular time, they flat out decided to block all the content coming from the particular site that was quoted in the DMCA, which I find kind of strange. They could have just blocked the URL to the picture, but instead they decided to block the whole site. They're betting in the suppression of free information without proving it's been infringed upon. People put information on the internet, do so of their own free will. Google is sought to have the reputation of the strongest search engine on the planet, but when threatened, they will fold. They put it on their own website that they're pussies.
I think technically it's not so much that they're pussies, it's that they are required to make the financial decision which is best for the stockholders in the company, and if they don't make that decision, their stockholders can have them removed. Without
making any effort to ascertain whether or not the infringement was true.
If it's cost effective, that's their obligation.
Well, that's right. So
if it's cost effective, it doesn't become a question of whether, frankly, this is the kind of horrid beauty of this corporation, is it removes all questions of ethics or morality from people and allows them to be completely sociopathic, which is what we're talking about here. So technically Google wasn't being a pussy, it was doing what was best for its investors' current perspective.
Yeah, which is fine. This is fine, but they're also damaging their reputation, because more and more times that they do it, they're going to lose more and more people who used to trust what they see. Now that everything is, not that everything is censored, because it is, but to a point. I mean, it was just one image. Which, by the way, at the time, you could go on any other search engine and type that URL in, and it would come right up for you. So, cease and desist may assert trademark infringement based on words and images. Okay, trademark has really nothing to do with this. You may be told that you are violating the law because your site links to illegal or copyrighted material, even if you do not host any of the material on your service. What about deep linking when you set a link to the inside page? Okay. I just don't understand the basis of linking to illegal content. It's just a link. I'm not responsible for that content. And I don't see the legality. How can they lawfully tell me that I can't have a link? It has nothing to do, I have no control over the content, and they do it constantly when it comes to, or what they started to do back 5 years ago, was when you have links to like sites with cracks and wares and serials, and then you go to these cracks and wares and serial sites, and they put a disclaimer right on the front and says, well, we don't actually really have these.
In New York, are gun conversion kits, are full-auto conversion kits still legal? It's just the same, because the reason I ask is it seems like it's the same sort of thing, is technically you're not giving somebody a fully automatic weapon, you are simply enabling them to take a weapon they already have and make it
Now, what would make you think I would know that?
Because you live in New York and you're interested in...
No, I don't. A, I don't live in New York, but B,
Yeah.
Excuse me, Boston. Because I know that they aren't legal in certain parts of the U.S. and they are legal in other parts. Anyone else have any idea?
no, they're not legal, as a matter of fact. And by the way, you can sell parts for a gun, you can't sell a frame, you can't sll a firing pin, but you can buy all the pieces for the same
Absolutely.
company.
So, I mean, it seems like it's very similar in terms of they've got basis for the legal argument here. Whether it's sane or not is a separate question.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I have a question.
Sure.
With all due respect, I understand your outrage about this and the supposed threat that it gives to reverse engineering, but don't you think that when you need to have the correct parser to parse this law? This is legalese. They have their own rules and regulations and how this is read, how this is court tested. And like many laws, some things can be overbroad. They do have exceptions, and it's court tested all the time. Felton and Skylark cases, they were resolved. The executive is actually voicing, since the year 2000, has been voicing some concern about the DMCA is overreaching because it infringes on a 100-year-old doctrine of first sale and so on. So I'm just saying, I think it's a bit hard just to read this law and try to make sense of it, because most laws are completely incomprehensible to the non-specialist, right?
Yes, you're 100% correct, and that's why this is my attempt to try to explain just a little tiny piece of this, where it's just so arbitrary and can be applied to so many situations. And I do believe Ed Felton got a big pile of money out of that deal, if I'm correct.
But that's generally how laws, what ends up happening with laws is they make them ridiculously generic and then they get tested in trial case, right?
Yeah.
That's how
But this was passed with practically no discussion.
Yes, exactly. No, you're exactly right. And the few cases that have been tested, pretty much the DMCA has been defeated. So, I mean...
And there are exceptions. Academic research is allowed. If you have to... And, you know, some of these things actually work in your favor. Interoperability. Just say, I'm doing this for interoperability.
Right.
And
this is the whole reason why I'm saying, on some of these things, what they think they mean and what they've written are two very different things. So they've left themselves, on one hand, they've left themselves, well, yeah, I'm working on interoperability. What are you going to do about it?
That seems like a pretty, given the effort to write this and close so many gaps, that seems like a pretty intentional thing to leave in, and a pretty, it doesn't seem like an oversight. That seems like, that doesn't seem like a, oops, we forgot to, that seems like something that they would specifically have included because one of their supporters said we need to have this, and maybe they actually did something right by it.
Brandon?
Well, one thing that I find very strange, I mean, the Woodmann case is known as one of the most important functions of the university. And the reason it's true is because a lot of crimes, or Texas crimes, do right and contribute. And they annoy, and display this really knowledge. Now what they don't do, they don't annoy people that are selling software, music, books, stolen software, stolen books on the web. Part of the knowledge that we find when you search for music, for software, or for books, is people that want to sell stolen books. And these people, they don't need, they grab assets around these department things because they have a server, the Gaza crowd, like that's section 5, or somewhere where you can't even go. So they couldn't care less. And they sell it. And everybody knows that. But they still annoy people that just start with a engineering. That's really shit.
Well, yes, absolutely. It's always been a stigma on us. It's like we were responsible for everything that's ever been pirated or waste or cracked on the planet. When you know, I know there are quite a few of you in this room who are frequent that forum and have very well paying jobs as a result of being a cracker. RIAA. Now this is something that really entertains me. RIAA sues people based on an IP address. Have they ever went to court with a CD they got from Joe Public CD player and said, the times these tracks were recorded closely match the times. We watched Joe download these songs from LimeWire. No, they have not. Because it's all about 50 grand. They got $50,000 they'll spend every 6 months to sue a bunch of college kids to try to scare the crap out of them. Okay? Let's say it's the beginning of time and you make the very first song ever. You own that song, that's your song. There's no doubts about it. You sing that song, somebody hears it, they move away, they sing that song somewhere else. Okay? Did that person write that song? No, they didn't. All right, let's get obscure. Let's put it this way. Probably everything on a file share right now has been downloaded and uploaded 100 times, 1,000 times from the very first time the original one was ever put up for downloading. guilty until we prove you're innocent, not the other way around. And I know this is going to sound stupid. In order for copyright protection to work in terms of the internet is to find out who stole your stuff. I mean, I can't make it any... How am I guilty if I'm the 1,259th person in a very long line of uploading and downloading MP3s? You know. Yeah, it's... How about this? It's not really ethical. How's that sound? It's not ethical to download music, but everybody does it.
I think technically that would fall under the category of trafficking in stolen goods or receiving stolen goods.
Absolutely.
If you purchase stolen goods, you're considered accomplice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
No.
yeah.
You're aware it's stolen, you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
If you're aware it's stolen, you have to forfeit and pay the fine.
Yeah.
If you weren't aware of the fine. Yeah, but you're not aware.
Yes.
That's the problem.
You're right, you're right.
One of the internal confusions, which is the idea that the law is somehow different on the internet, when a lot of the things we're doing are just the same.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, the need for additional legal documents here. The whole notion of separate ethics for the internet is, frankly, fundamentally flawed.
Yes,
The same ethics
absolutely.
apply.
It is debatable. You can have a road, you can put a road built for 10 cars, it's very hard to make 1 million cars because atoms are expensive, but bits are very cheap. There's not, you can have
Have
copies
you
of
tried to
stuff.
put a million users down at 2,400 baud modem?
Let me help the DMCA figure out what it is they want to do.
Real world, they want to have some on that.
The DMCA wants to, here, I'm going to help you right now. If you're the DMCA and you're listening, you need to type in where's, and don't forget, you got to use the Z. Where's serials, keygens, badges, cracks? Those are the people you want. They don't crack software, they steal it. Oh, and the people who share files, like I said, ethically it's not right, but we all know what it's for, and it's certainly not to provide the world with a copy of this silly text file. When the wild west of the internet was just that wild, there were no rules to govern the sharing of files. Now they see what this great thing is wrought and they are mad. And that's true. That's true. The big powers never thought any of this would happen. Remember, it all goes back to the whole Sony Betamax dispute where, you know, oh my God, people are going to make a copy on a VHS of a show and the movie industry is going to collapse and everything's going to come to an end. And that was the first, you know, big deal.
Actually, before that, it was a problem for
Cassettes.
composers. Actually, no, it was a problem for composers. Going back hundreds of years, you had the problem of people taking copies of your music and duplicating it and selling it for cheap to other orchestras and other conductors who wanted to perform it and not paying proper copyright. Likewise, going back to the early, at least back to the beginning of the 20th century, you had issues with paying royalty fees to composers of any piece. Anytime a singer sang, for instance, Skylark by Cole Porter, they had to pay him fees. Anytime they did a recording of it. So this has been going on. It's been a problem forever.
Okay, so essentially, like I said, DMCA, the way they wrote their document, maybe they just decided to point it to reverse engineers just because it was easy. I mean, you know, the crackers are all in foreign countries, and now if you go to a site looking for a serial or a keygen, it's very it's difficult to get it. You got to keep clicking through, and it's just really a pain in the ass. And that's because the wheres and the cracks and the keygen serial ports are all getting killed now. Yes.
So on the topic of the DMCA, do you have any ideas on how to use this seemingly arbitrary law in our advantage? Or
I think
it's
it's completely to our advantage. That's the funny thing about it. When I read it, it's so vague. Well, how can it be illegal? Just because you won't.
Well, but I think you've actually made the point, you've made actually the reverse point, which is that it is completely to our advantage, but every time you refuse to go and fight for compensation, and unfortunately every time your provider chooses to shut you down instead, they're winning because they're just waving a big enough boogeyman at you that you're not able to stand up and say, I'm going to invest the resources and time to...
That's true. That's completely true. And you know what? Most of the people, when faced with this, will go down and go away. They won't persevere to come back. They won't persevere to argue their point.
Debate law, you're going to have to make case law in favor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But all laws are vague. I mean, that's the purpose. The notion in this country.
Which country?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, people, my time is up. I got to get out of here. Thank you very much.